Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast. I'm Joey Van Zummeren, joined as always by Michael Stamps here. We both report on Mizzou basketball and football presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. So excited to be here today. Some exciting news for Missouri football coming earlier in this week, and then the Mizzou basketball team entering what is going to be a formidable stretch. They're really going to fuel the SEC that Dennis Gates has been talking about all these weeks here. So it should be an exciting time. Starting off with football, Michael, just your initial reaction to the news yesterday that linebacker Triston Newson will be utilizing that extra year of eligibility he gets from playing the first few years of his career in JUCO.
Yeah, I think Triston Newson is one of the most dynamic, was one of the most dynamic players on this Missouri defense last year. I think that's going to be the case this year. And if you look at, that linebacker slash edge room, blending together a little bit, there is just so much talent there. Maybe even too much, but no reason to speculate or anything. But that's a very deep room, and it just stacks up this defense even more. Um, I think there are questions about this team as a whole, heading into spring and obviously next season about who's going to perform where and who's going to play where. Obviously, there's a lot of new transfer additions that appear to be good players, but they still have to perform at their given spots. But Triston Newson is a given. He's going to go out and do his thing. He recorded 71 tackles, sack, forced fumble this season. Just truly a dynamic athlete, dynamic player. There's not a single negative thing you could say. I mean, it's a huge, huge addition. Um, Sounds like he was leaning towards potentially going to the NFL. I don't know what other option there would have been uh, outside of returning besides entering the transfer portal, which would have probably taken many people by surprise. So I don't. It's kind of hard to pinpoint what his NFL draft hopes would have looked like, but doesn't really matter right now. He's a Missouri Tiger for one more season. You'd imagine he's going to be a leader on that defense. It's going to be his third year in that group. So maybe you look, to a captaincy sort of role, something like that. He's going to be a veteran there. But just his general presence is going to be massive, and he's a dynamic player, dynamic athlete that I would imagine Eli Drinkwitz, Corey Batoon are thrilled to have back.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned just his experience now, the leadership he's going to have in that room. Obviously, his third year, and also he has plenty of those JUCO years built up too. So this guy has been around the block certainly. And I was just looking at it. Tristan Newson, he took the seventh most snaps on Missouri's defense this past season. So the return of him, and then also Dalen Carnell, both of them making the decision to return is just huge for this Missouri defense. And obviously they've lost some pieces. I would say more so they've lost pieces that were going to be big parts of the future puzzle. But overall, looking at their snap counts, at least they're returning number 1, number 2, number 7, number 8, number 10, number 12, and number 15, which is pretty good for this day and age in college football. And then all of the transfers, so adding to that side of the ball, they've beefed up the safety room, which is losing, I would suspect, the most production out of any other position on the team. They really added some depth at cornerback that they needed. They obviously added Damon Wilson to that edge room. So overall, this defense is looking to be in good shape to have its for a third straight season of being real, fourth straight season really of having a really talented group. And Newsom is going to be a big part of that for sure. Michael, anything else to add there before we get kind of more specific on this linebacker room in general now?
Yeah, just a testament to Eli Drinkwitz's player retention. I think he's a pretty, he's been good at it for the most part. And I think now more and more just the general landscape of college sports, you see athletes that really have no business transferring, entering the transfer portal, guys that were productive on their team, that either appeared to have had a big role or upcoming or had a big role on their team leave to go to the best schools and get the most money. And I'm not saying, Tristan Newson, and you can even throw Dalen Carnell in there if you want to, because I guess we didn't, know for sure he was coming back until he made his announcement a while back. Um, But the fact that they're coming back and they didn't, go chase the money or go chase a bigger opportunity at a higher profile school, says a lot about Eli Drinkwitz and the culture he's established. Because more and more you see guys with maybe the profile that Newson and Carnell had relative to their team, leave and go, go to make more money or go to a bigger name team or bigger name program or a better conference, uh, and maybe lose a little bit of that original playing opportunity. So, I mean, to say the least, Carnell and Newson are going to have huge roles on this defense, and obviously we don't know, leadership wise and captain wise, but just having those guys in your room who've been there for multiple seasons now, is such a luxury. And not only have they been there for a while, they've been productive for 3 to 4 seasons, which you really just don't find anymore. So it's truly a testament to Eli Drinkwitz and his coaching staff, for developing that culture and instilling it, in these guys' minds that they want to stay with the team for, as long as they really can.
Right, exactly. And it's been shown over the past 2 seasons that this is a place that you can thrive and continue to raise your draft stock. And Drinkwitz has commented on over these past 2 seasons as well. The guys that have chosen to stick around for one last year to not only um, selfishly, I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but for their self interest to boost that draft stock, boost their um, publicity, but then also to be a part of something special, like you were hitting on, Michael, and to, um, again, chase that dream of a spot in the playoffs. Ohio State, after they won the national championship, Jack Sawyer was talking to Holly Rowe about all the guys that came back and decided to stick around. And overall, I mean, this is an unnecessary tangent, but I was just confused a little bit by Ohio State's messaging throughout this whole campaign about how they've been through so much over the past few years. I mean, I guess a Cotton Bowl loss to Missouri where not a lot of their starters and key players are playing. But I won't take it away from them. I get the PR they got to do. But anyways, that same messaging feels a little bit more real with Missouri for the guys that are sticking around, trying to be a part of something special. And Carnell and Newson are kind of going to be the last signs and the last players of that last era. Even though Newson wasn't around in 2022, he came around in 2023 when the team had that good season. But for, again, 2-3 year starters, to have them back on your team is especially good when, as we've been talking about, just the fluidity of your roster. I just don't have any idea how you can instill your scheme at all with these players. And so to have those guys, especially in the middle of the field, feels really important. I know Chuck Hicks wore the green dot for the communications helmet for a majority of last season. I don't know. I would suspect they were trying some different guys out once he started seeing less playing time. But honestly, I would think that would have been Corey Flagg, if anything. But possibly Newson a candidate for that. So overall in this linebacker room now, though, specifically at will linebacker with Newson, I mean, inside linebacker Mike is a whole different thing there. But I mean, obviously they have Newson. They have Khalil Jacobs, who they really liked on third downs this past season, the former South Alabama transfer. I'm a big Khalil Jacobs fan of what he does on the field. And then you have Mekhi Bayer coming over from Nebraska. Nick Rodriguez could also play there. Obviously, he got some experience in his freshman season. So going to be interesting to watch this inside linebacker room as a whole, but especially with Newson and Jacobs, you got to feel really good about how well. I mean, one, you can rush the passer really well. With both those, I would say Newson has a little bit more ability dropping back in coverage, but then both of them are just really good at, kind of like Tyron Hopper was before, being able to stretch the field, really able to move quickly horizontally in the run game. So as we've been harping on, this Missouri defense should feel pretty confident as they enter a new season. And not in the linebacker room specifically, but Dara Smith returning from injury as well, along with Khalil Jacobs. So should be an exciting season for Missouri defense. Any final thoughts there, Michael?
Yeah, Uh, Maybe I'm not good at my job. Completely forgot about Khalil Jacobs. That's an exciting guy to have back. And you mentioned his movement horizontally, but I love him getting downhill too, and using scheming him in the pass rush. And I remember a couple plays, vaguely just getting him open, and he can hit a gap, and he's so athletic. And Newson as well, and they can both play in coverage as well. So it's just again, what a unique um, bunch or group of skill sets that all play the same position. It's honestly kind of fascinating, and that Eli Drinkwitz and Corey Batoon, it almost seems like they have exactly what they want. Um, it's not necessarily obviously you lose guys, but you could draw some similarities to maybe like a Trotter or a Bayor to Corey Flagg, and then obviously you keep guys around like Newson and Jacobs that are play a role that that they can play. So I just think the different skill sets that the Batoon and Drinkwitz have on this defense at all the positions really. We talked about Damon Wilson last week, and he has a similar build to a Ja'Kai Lang, a Johnny Walker, right? That's probably not a coincidence. They play similar styles of football. So it seems like they're getting the guys that they want, and for the certain role that they're going to play, which I also think is very important.
Yeah, most certainly. They definitely have a type at will linebacker here. Moving on to Missouri basketball, coming off a loss against Texas, 61-53. The final score, just a underwhelming game overall from this team to be coming off a 4-game win streak in the SEC, including wins over Florida, I guess what you could consider a blowout over Arkansas. Really a dominant performance there, and then to go out in Texas and really be flat the whole time. Overall, though, I think we've both come to the conclusion of this isn't one where you're starting to raise a lot of red flags about this team. Obviously, again, it's underwhelming, disappointing, especially for this being their first game as a ranked team in quite some time to go out there and lay an egg. But overall, I think they were forced into some bad situations. I think there's some nights where you just don't click. I think there was some shots they were pressured into that are not good looks for them. And then overall, to all of that piled up with in the second half to have few guys in foul trouble. To I mean, they just were not rebounding well defensively either. And yeah, I think when you look at the stat sheet overall, I mean, they shot just around 30% from the field, 4 of 22 or somewhere around that range on 3-point shots. You're not going to win many basketball games in that situation. So, Michael, what are your kind of main thoughts on this loss?
Well, I think what kept Missouri around was the fact that Texas shot 20% from three as well. Really one of the uglier basketball games I've watched in recent memory. I mean, it was very physical and defensive minded, but even then, I feel like Texas got good, and they shot terrible too. I mean, they were 17 to 50, right? So that's not compared to Missouri's 15 to 48. So not good, but I think I liked the looks that Texas got more. Um, the story of the game is on the offensive glass, uh, 14 offensive rebounds for Texas, 8 for Missouri, and I believe it was 20 second chance points off those. And it didn't seem like there was a massive size difference between the two teams. So maybe it was just a effort and energy thing. And obviously, Shedrick is a good big man, but Mark Mitchell, Josh Gray, those are guys that should really be able to match up with a guy like Cade Shedrick. He's a skilled rebounder, but still, I think that was probably the main the main thing. So I the nice thing about college basketball is it's not like college football. You don't have 12, 13 game or however many games they play, right? You get 30 or some 32, 31, 32 games. So one of these doesn't matter. I mean, it does, but in the grand scheme of things, right, it's not the end of the world because you have so many more left. But it's important that those mistakes and those mental errors, I guess, and those bad shooting nights, you don't want to start stacking those because this is a good shooting team. It's obviously a very good offensive team. I think I would imagine this is their worst offensive performance of the season, statistically, and just, the amount of points they've scored. So probably an anomaly, right? And you'd imagine they get back on track, but you want to make sure that those don't start to stack, as the season progresses, because teams like Ole Miss are going to take advantage of a sloppy game. And I think it's also worth noting that an ugly physical game probably favored Texas from the beginning. But both teams not shooting well. Lots of fouls. I mean, goodness, 40 something, almost 60 free throw attempts between both teams. And I'm not complaining about officials at all. I think a lot of those are probably fouls. I saw a lot of Twitter complaints about fouling, but I mean, they were fouling a lot. So not the best defensive performance, I guess, in that aspect. But that style of game where neither team could score, and it's just kind of stagnant, no momentum, probably favored Texas, right? They were at home, and I read a lot about this on Twitter and some other stories from Missouri media as well. I mean, Texas really needed that game, right? They were struggling, and they'd been through we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. They'd been through a gauntlet of SEC games throughout the season. Missouri, outside their game, went against Oklahoma, probably their most winnable game they had played in conference play so far, and they needed it and really bad, and they got it. So, like I said, not the end of the world right now. You just want to make sure that these losses and really ugly bad games don't start to compound on each other.
Right. It definitely would have been more concerning if there was some lingering issues for Missouri that were just all out exposed from this one. But these all, not to say that they were out of the blue, but were not anything that was again, a expose of all of the things that have been troubling them all season that they've just managed to crack up in the rest of their wins. It was a lot of new, different, again, I think anomaly type things. So moving into this next stretch here, again, they're facing 4 straight games with all opponents ranked. After this game against Ole Miss, all 3 are going to be in the top 15. So just a really tough schedule coming up where we're really going to get to see. Obviously, I think Missouri's established themselves as a tournament caliber team. But I think in this next stretch here, we're really going to find out just how much are they capable of. We talked last week, what is their ceiling? And I think this upcoming stretch of 2 weeks, we're going to get a much better idea of what that really is. I think that Florida game gives you a lot of confidence for their resiliency, and that's what you need to battle with some of these top teams in the country. So, wanted to talk about what they need to show in these next few weeks to raise that ceiling, provide more confidence overall. What do you have, Michael?
One thing I would like to see is just more on a consistent basis, better performances from the group of Missouri big men. And I guess I guess you can throw Mark Mitchell in there. He's played pretty well so far in conference play, and he's been a semi-consistent scorer. So I'm not going to bunch him in there for the sake of what I'm trying to say, but I lean more towards Josh Gray and I guess Aiden Shaw, who we don't really see much of at all anymore, and I guess Peyton Marshall as well. So I guess I'm targeting this towards Josh Gray, but Josh Gray really hasn't had the best run of games recently, and his size is very valuable on this team, and that's what he's there for. He's a big presence. They don't need him to score. Don't turn the ball over, get rebounds, and wall up and play good defense, right? And make a hustle play here and there. And he had 2 turnovers against Texas, which just can't happen. And one of those I remember very vividly, where he dribbled the ball up the court and threw it to nobody in the stands. So just small mistakes like that just can't happen. He could be better defensively as well, as far as walling up and guarding the rim, but also just positioning and knowing where to be, especially on pick and rolls, fouling and that sort of thing as well. So I just think there could be some more consistency there. His minutes have dipped a little bit. Obviously, he was in the starting lineup for a while. I would like to believe that he'll get inserted back into the starting lineup if there is a team with some sort of dominant big man that they need to limit right off the right off the bat. I can't think of one off the top of my head right now. So, maybe not. If that is the case, maybe he gets thrown in there. And Trent Pierce has held his own on defense as well. So I guess that's been helpful. And the small ball lineup is working. We really saw that against Arkansas. That was a good look. But I think Josh Gray could be more impactful. And so can his counterparts. I mean, like I said, Aiden Shaw doesn't really even play anymore, which maybe is a conversation in itself. And obviously Peyton Marshall still has a ways to go. So just generally, I guess, some more consistent, defensive and rebounding and performances from those guys.
Right. With Josh Gray specifically, I mean, he had a really nice start to SEC play. I think he had back-to-back games with double-digit rebounds at one point. But yeah, he's definitely had his moments. And that was player Dennis Gates called out specifically after the win over Arkansas on where can Missouri continue to improve. Mentioned Josh Gray. He mentioned, I mean, not just to call him out for the sake of calling him out, but the fact of saying that they're not clicking on all cylinders, and they'll reach their peak when in some hypothetical world, because I've very rare to see any team get to a point where they have all guys playing at 100%, performing at 100% at all at the same time. So, but Josh Gray performing with the rest of the guys, it would definitely be a big step up. Looking at this Ole Miss team, an interesting group. I mean, they in the SEC, they are 15th in rebounds. They play really clean though. They'll give up the second least turnovers, and that was the thing against Alabama. They're upset over Alabama. Ole Miss had 7 turnovers. Alabama 21, which is obviously a big difference there. Not shooting particularly well. I mean, they're 44.5%, which is third lowest in the SEC too. So again, you can't deny the resume. Win over Alabama. Let's see here. Lost by Purdue at Purdue by just 2 points. So tough team here, Michael. What can you tell us about the Rebels?
They're just gritty, physical, like I don't want to say a stereotypical prototype SEC team, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of Ole Miss. They're big. They have 2 really quick and smaller guards, and Jalen Murray and Sean Padula. Both have made multiple stops in their college careers, and Murray is 5'11", 165. Padula is 6'1", 195. So kind of just a testament there that those aren't the biggest guys, but they are the 2 leading scorers in that team. So 2 good players there. Padula, very good shooter as well. So someone to keep an eye on there. Matthew Morrell, I would like to think, is one of the better guards in the SEC. I think he had some NBA hopes. He came back for the season, so that's another good one. As a team, I guess one thing that says it to me, they're taking 26 threes a game. That's 5th in the conference. On defense, they allow 65.5 points per game. That's the 3rd best in the conference, behind Georgia and Tennessee. They're just really solid. I can't believe Jamin Brakefield's still playing basketball, but he is. He's been around for a while. Malik Diaz, a transfer. They just got some guys that, good blend of size and physicality, athleticism, speed, strength. It sounds kind of like cliche to call a team scrappy, but I remember watching Purdue Ole Miss, a couple months ago, whenever that was, and that kind of was my first impression that they're a physical defensive team, and active hands, and they could get in passing lanes and things like that. So, just a very intense team as well, especially on defense. So, they, in the most respectful way, they're not the flashiest or most exciting team to watch, but clearly they're winning basketball games, and they're 15-4 in the conference, which is pretty darn good. So I think Missouri has themselves quite a challenge. Being back at home definitely helps. This is probably not a team you want to play on the road. I don't think Missouri wants to play them on the road at all. So that probably benefits them a little bit. But yeah, they're a physical team. Probably play a pretty similar style of basketball to Texas if I were to make a comparison. So
Right. I mean, looking at it in the SEC, Ole Miss leads the conference with steals per game, 10.1, and Missouri right behind them with 10 even. So this really feels like a game. You mentioned their scrappiness that could just come down to who makes the least mistakes. So this definitely would be feels like a important game for Missouri. In a vacuum, maybe not, but I think the fact that they're coming off a loss, I mean, it's a home game in SEC play, which we've harped on before, the importance of winning your home games, taking those where you can get them. And then obviously, again, heading into just a really difficult stretch here to end off the month of January and head into February. So that's going to round out conversation today on the All Things Mizzou podcast. We appreciate you tuning in and hope you do the same for the rest of our coverage over at Missouri Tigers on SI.